So, Road to UFC 2023 is going to be coming up later this year. I believe it's going to start around June. And these are the fighters that have been signed for the 2023 tournament. If you don't know what Road to UFC is, it is that tournament that ranges from flyweight to lightweight. And all of the fighters will be getting a contract if they can make it into the finals. So first and second place in the tournament both gets contracts. We saw a couple of fighters signed, obviously from last year's season. I believe it was in one of the final fight night cards. They made their UFC fight, and it was in the Apex, I believe, and the winners and losers got signed. But let's just talk about the guys that have been signed for 2023. Not all of them have been announced yet, but I believe 7 flyweights have, and then also a bunch of other lower weight class fighters. I believe this year is going to contain welterweights in the tournament. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that's what the case is going to be. And also there's going to be women's flyweights as well, I'm pretty sure. So that should be entertaining as well. Very exciting to see who they pick up and the fighters that they do pick up. A lot of these guys I am familiar with, but a lot of these guys I'd never heard of before. So it's always interesting to see who UFC manages to find for Dana White's Contender Series and for Road to UFC. If I find any Dana White's Contender Series news, I will be breaking it to you guys on YouTube, of course. But let's just get into it. So from China, who's been signed so far is Jinu Shiyi. He's 11-2 in a flyweight. I'll be going over his topology and everyone else's topology at the end of the video. Zhao Long, who's 24-7 from bantamweight. He was meant to be on Road to UFC last year, and he's also fought in Dana White's Contender Series before. Dayomesi Zawapasi, who's 6-0 in a bantamweight. Bahati Boli Balate is 7-1-1 in a lightweight. I know a lot about Bahati Boli, so I'll talk about him when we get there on topology. Oili Muratbek, who is 13-2, one of my favourites to win the whole thing, depending on who they do sign in the future, obviously. Sumit Kamar, who's 4-0 in a flyweight. He is 7-0. Depending on what website you look at, once again, we'll be talking about that when we get to him on Tapology. Rei Saruya, who's 6-0 in a flyweight from Japan. Very exciting prospect. I believe he's only 20 years old. And another fighter that's only 20 years old is Lee Jong-hyun, who's 8-0 in a flyweight. So that's interesting as well. Lee Chang-ho is 7-1 and a bantamweight. I believe he hasn't signed yet. It is announced on this little update to the side. He hasn't signed, but he does intend to be there. And from Indonesia, we've got a few fighters. We've got Billy Pasulatan, who's 10-2. Ronald Siahan, who's 7-0. Epiriam Ginting, who is 6-0. Reza Arianto, who's 5-0. And Wendris Patilamar, who's 8-0 and welterweight. But there's rumours circling that he's going to be fighting at lightweight, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'll talk about him when we get there. And from the USA is Mark Clamarco, but he does have a Philippines heritage, so I believe that's why he is in this tournament, which is kind of more focused on signing more Asian fighters. We'll get around to their topologies now. Jinu Shiyi is 11-2, a fighter that I hadn't really heard of before. I don't know much about him, but he does seem to be very interesting. He's 11-2. He hasn't fought the best competition. A lot of these guys from China haven't really, because they fight like a tournament style. It's like a crazy tournament that they just kind of all sign up for, and just fighters fight for whoever at WLF. I love it, and JCK as well also, I believe. But anyway, he hasn't fought the best guys. Jifa Shang is a really fun fighter who I would like to see on the roster. He's beaten a lot of good guys. In my opinion, he beat Juan Puerta as well. He should have won that fight. He's not signed, but I want to see him signed. But that's the first fighter on the list. From flyweight, the next flyweight is Sumit Kamar, who's 4-0, but 7-0. Depending on where you look, a lot of these fighters, fights that he's got are kind of deemed to be a bit dodgy, or maybe done to be potentially like the guy purposely lost. But I believe this fight here against Vijay Sinj Barriola, he was 2-0 at the time. So it's interesting. Sorry, he was 2-1 at the time. So I find it interesting. It's not like he was fighting guys that like 0-40, 0-50. Like he was 2-1. You know, he had fought and he'd won before. So it is what it is. He's either 4-0 or 7-0 where you look. I believe he trains in the USA as well at Team Alpha Male. He does. I did know about Sumit Kamar a while ago just because someone messaged me, so shout out to them about it, but I just won't say who it was. He was 22 years old, and yeah, I think he's going to be in the flyweight division. Mark Clamarco is my pick to win the whole thing, personally. He fights out of USA. He was born in the USA, but I believe his family is from the Philippines, and I believe he does have close ties to Philippines, so he was born in California. He does fight out of California as well, but he does have close ties to the Philippines, I do believe. He's a good fighter. He lost to Yuma Horiyuchi, who was on Road to UFC last year, actually. and just come off a loss to Felipe Bunes. But yeah, he lost to Topnoi Karam, who I would love to see on the show again, and I think we probably will see Topnoi Karam on the show again because he just got a win. So keep your eye out for that. He did beat this guy, he knocked him out in the first round, but he's 5-10, but that's what it is. We move on. Ray Saruya, I thought this guy was going to be on, and I'm so happy he is. He's 6-0, 20 years old, he's from Japan as well. UFC's looking for those Japanese fighters. He's got 6 finishes. He's beaten good guys as well. 8-3, 18-7, 11-10, not the best record, but he does have a lot of experience, and he has gone the distance with Jung Hyun Lee, who is 20 years old himself from South Korea, 8-0. The same guy, I believe, Taiki Akiba, got finished in the first round by Ray Saruya, but Jung Hyun Lee took him to a decision. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up. Jung Hyun Lee, probably another favorite to win the whole thing. I think maybe he could make it to the finals. I mean, we've got seven flyweights here, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how it goes. But we've got one more flyweight that could mix it up. But I think Jung Hyun Lee, Ray Saruya, and Mark Clamarco could be favorites to make it all the way. Another one is Billy Pasilatan, who's 10-2. He's a pretty good fighter himself as well. He is from Indonesia. He hasn't beaten the best competition in the world. Sorry, he has actually. He's fought a lot of good guys actually. 5-1, 6-1, 10-1, and 9-3. So maybe he could be a guy to upset. You know what I mean? He's fought a lot of good guys himself. Now we move on. I believe Ronell is also in the flyweight division. He's 7-0. He's fought a couple of good guys as well. Split decision to an 8-3 fighter. Finished in the first round a 6-3 and 8-5 fighter. Pretty good for him. Now we move up to bantamweight. Long Zhao. Long Zhao's had a lot of complications trying to get into this situation here, into the road to UFC. I believe he got sick before this fight against Minwoo Kim, which would have been interesting. And then he was meant to fight Felipe Leiva, and then he got injured. So he missed out on his opportunity for Road to UFC last year. He was meant to fight in Dana White's Contender Series. In fact, he did fight in Dana White's Contender Series to Christian Quinones, who has now gone on a little bit of a run himself, just KO'd Khalid Taha in the first round, and he had a pretty competitive fight with Christian Quinones. So he could be an up-and-coming guy to look out for, only 24 years old as well. The next bantamweight is Dayamasi Zawapasi. I had not heard of Dayamasi Zawapasi before, but he seems like a pretty good guy. He hasn't really fought anyone too great, a lot of first-round finishes, but then he did fight a 20-8 opponent, Fuchong Yang, who's got a massive fight coming up himself, actually, against Kieran Mawali, Mai Tohohiti, where the winner of that fight would probably be on Dana White's on a road to UFC this year. I think it's coming up very soon. It is. In fact, it's actually happening the day that I'm recording this, or the day after, depending on the time zone. So, the winner of that fight might actually end up on road to UFC themselves, which could be interesting, especially because Toshiyomi Kazama, the guy they lost to, just got signed to the UFC himself. So, be interesting to see what happens there. The next one is Chang Ho Lee. I believe Chang Ho Lee is a guy that hasn't signed for the road to UFC, but he's got full intentions of fighting for road to UFC. So he could be someone to look out for. He's 7-1. I believe he's going to be fighting at bantamweight. He's fought good guys. 8-4, 3-0, and 1-0, I guess. Not really the best in the world, but he's definitely kind of been around and fought some pretty decent opponents. We move up. I'm just going to delete a lot of tabs here because I'm confusing myself. We move on to Reza Arianto, who's 5-0. He will be fighting at featherweight, We move on to the featherweights. Reza Arianto is going to be cutting weight from 155 to 145. He's been a couple of good guys. Finished a lot of guys, 3-0, 3-3, 4-4. Maybe just hasn't stepped up in competition in his career yet. This would be a very big test for him. I believe he's cutting down to 145 for the event, so keep an eye out for him. We move on. Epiriam Ginting, who is 6-0. He is also another featherweight from Indonesia himself, and he, I believe, is a younger guy. He's 6-0. And he's got lots of finishes, dude. 6 finishes. So I like that out of him. He's fought a lot of good guys. Then we move on. Bahati Boli Bate Balati. 7-1-1. 25 years old. I believe he last fought at welterweight, but he should be fighting at lightweight in this tournament. One of the guys that probably could be a favourite to win the whole thing. I mean, Harris Talunzik has gone on to do his own thing and looked pretty good. I think he fought in PFL, did he not? No, he didn't. Sorry, he lost in the LFA to Chris Brown, who's a good prospect. An older guy, but a good prospect himself. And Bahati Boli Bate Balati, He's a good fighter, you know what I mean? He's a very good striker. I believe all of these fights here happened in China, but he moved over to the USA because he wanted to fight in the UFC. So now that he's been signed to road to UFC, this is a big opportunity to get it done. He throws a lot of kicks, a lot of head kicks, a lot of body kicks. It'd be interesting to see what he can kind of bring to the game. Ali Molatbieki is another guy that I think has got a very good chance of winning the whole thing. 13-2, hasn't really fought the best guys in the world, and even then, he's taken a lot of guys that he probably should be finishing to the distance. Like, he took a guy that was 3-4 to decision, 16-10 to the decision, Yubi Jelly, who's actually pretty good himself. I think he's actually got a lot of wins since then. He's gotten a massive win streak. Maybe you could see him on road to UFC, you never know. But, yeah, dude, like, he's fighting good guys. He's fighting some like 15-3 opponent, ZTR there. But every now and then, because it's this you know what I mean, this tournament style that they do, a lot of not so great competition, but he should do pretty well himself. A lot of experience. We move on to the final fighter, Wendries Patilima, who has been fighting at 170 for most of his career, I believe. There's rumors going around he's going to be cutting to 155. I look forward to seeing this guy fight, man. He's got a good kind of level of competition behind him. 4-0, 6-1, 6-0, 3-0, and 4-3 all finishes, except for one decision actually against the 4-3 opponent. But dude, this guy's got power in the hands. He's got heat, and I'm looking forward to seeing him fight if it is 155 or 170. So, be interesting to see what he decides to do. But I'm gonna be covering this quite extensively. Shout out to MMA Ecosystem as well, by the way. I forgot to mention that at the start. He's the source for like everything around this sort of thing. He's the source for everything Asian MMA. Yeah, he just really is. He's a great source. He's also a great source for fight announcements as well. He's usually first. Sometimes he even beats Big Marcel to things, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna be covering this extensively. I'll do fight companions for it. I'll be doing predictions for it. I'll be enjoying it, man. I'm looking forward to it. I like watching Dana White's Contender Series. I like watching Road to UFC. So it should be a good event. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.